Welcome back. Hopefully everyone had a nice lunch. And speaking of food, there was some leftover food. So after we conclude our last talk with Mary Rice Hassan later this afternoon, the Knights of Columbus have offered to leave the food available for any of you that might be interested in having some of that at the end. So they'll have it over in the same area. So momentarily here, we're going to have the State Deputy from the Knights of Columbus come out and just talk for just a few minutes, just kind of running through things. The CFR sisters are in the multi-purpose room. Meg Hunter is over in the chapel, and Father Leo will be back here in just a couple of minutes as well. Also, the canoe, which is up for raffle, with our seminarian Josh in the back, if you can wave. Yes, if none of you have not seen the canoe yet, that's a raffle to help pay for seminarian expenses. And now, if I could please welcome Deacon Jones, who is the State Deputy. Just want to speak about the Knights for a minute. They are major contributors and supporters of this conference. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Is everybody having a grand time? Yeah. On behalf of the State Council, I thank you all for coming and being here. And the Knights, I thank the Knights 8308, 12431, 13566, and 5011 for doing an outstanding job providing food for you. Yes. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our wives for showing up to show support and help. I know my wife Betsy's here. We as Knights, we try to do a lot. We extend ourselves, but we couldn't do it without our wives. So again, we thank you for coming, and we thank all of you for being here, and we hope you have a great time, learn a lot, and be hungry for God. All right? Have a great afternoon.
And so after this talk, there will be a brief break, and then the next talk will be I take that back. So after this talk, there's the optional Divine Mercy Chaplet at 3:15 in the chapel. And then the next main talk after that, the breakout will be at 3:45. Meg Hunter and Multipurpose, Craig and Amy in the chapel this time. For adults over 18 will be Mary Rice Hassan. That will be the first talk with her this afternoon. So at this point, please welcome Father Leo Patalinghug.
Thank you. Make sure that technology is. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Do I sound taller? Okay, good. That's all I wanted to make sure. When I was invited to do this show and to even consider cooking on TV, it was very awkward. In fact, when they said, "This is a great idea, let's film a pilot," I said, "Over my resurrected body. It's just not going to happen because I don't want to be on TV." And I'll be very honest with you. It's because the camera adds 5 extra pounds to you, okay? That's really why. And if you're on TV, 10 pounds, this gentleman is telling me. Thanks a lot, okay? And if you're on TV, what people think on how you are on TV is exactly how you are in life. And that's not always true. There are times when you have to be on, and there are times when you have to be off. I'm so grateful that Jesus was so good with his disciples. Get out there and work, come away and rest. And I think if we are going to have a healthy life with our family, in our relationships, we have to know, and this is cooking language, when to turn up the heat and when to turn things down. These little food analogies are what I use in my books. Now, we talked a little bit about grace before meals already, and it's just about bringing family feast days around the dinner table. There was one mother who said, because she was a recipe tester, in fact, all of the recipes are tested, she said, the thing about this book was that my kids ate way more than you recommended, so your portions are off. But the best part about this book was that we didn't have to wait for a holiday. We created one. If there's one thing I hope you get out of this talk, is that Catholics aren't boring. So in order for you never to be bored again, I'm going to give to you the definition of boring. So pay attention. Boring is answering a question that no one is asking. It's like what parents, when they're just talking and kids are like, I don't care what you're talking about. This makes no sense to me. What we've got to do is make sure that our faith is constantly asking questions, constantly, ready for this, questing the author. And why? Because if you don't quest the author, which requires humility, then you will simply in life be questioning authority. And people who question authority, it's the same root words, quest the author, question authority. People who question authority, they're annoying. They're just annoying people. There was one time I was driving to the mall to go Christmas shopping, and I don't like that at all. Because I'm a guy, I wear black. So Christmas and fashion, that stuff doesn't mean anything to me. And there was only one parking spot, and it was right next to this car to an owner who I knew I would not like because of the bumper stickers. There were political bumper stickers. There were gross bumper stickers. There was one that said, "Get your rosaries out of my ovaries." Yeah, and my first thought was, gross. I mean, that's not where rosaries belong, right? I mean, but I know what they're trying to say. Keep God out of my personal, my private, even my intimacy, or even sexual life. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fine, but the one that really annoyed me was the one bumper sticker that just simply said, "Question authority." And I just wanted to wait for that person to come back and say, what authority do you have to make me question authority? Do you hear? The problem is that everyone wants to play authority, but they are not the author. And if there's one area in our life that needs an authority, it's relationships, including yours, whether it be to your spouse or to your family or to God. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be combining topics from Spicing Up Married Life to Epic Food Fight, the two most recent books that I wrote. And I know that you heard the joke about why I wrote Spicing Up Married Life, but to be very honest with you, it was because I wrote it in honor of my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, because I'm their favorite child. And so I wrote the book, and I said, "This is for you, Mom and Dad." I wrote it, and my mom says, "What am I going to do with this book? I've been married to your dad for 50 years. I said, "Just read the book. I wrote it for you and Dad," all right? So she gets the book, and she's flipping through, and she comes back, and she said, "Son, this is a good book." And the reason is because it's all about the theology of marriage. You know, my whole work is to try to strengthen families around the dinner table. But dinner table and family life only begins with mom and dad's generous love for each other. And so this book takes you on a relationship of true definition of marriage, which the world thinks is the union between two people, and it doesn't matter what those two people are. These days, I even saw a news clip of a woman who married a dolphin. It's kind of silly. I mean, I've had a guy marry himself. I mean, if he has multiple personalities, I guess that qualifies, you know? I'm not sure. But a lot of times people will think that marriage is simply the union of two people. And theologically, that's not correct. True marriage is the union of three people, man, woman, and God, who is love. And what we've got to do is make sure that God is an integral part of the relationship. And so this book just simply categorizes the experiences of a married couple. And I wrote all of this in conjunction with the marriage preparation program that I developed when I was working in parishes. And I found out that couples have no clue how powerful their sacrament is. There are, in canon law, 2 sacraments that bring holiness to this world. And you know what they are? Priesthood, religious consecrated life. You know what the other one is? Marriage. It took me 6 years after college to get ordained a priest. It takes couples 6 classes. And here's what I'm asking you to do then, couples, and anyone investigating a potential relationship. Become theologians. You must become theologians. And a theologian is someone who practices theology. And theology is an interesting word. It is a combination of 2 words, theo, of God, logos, which means the word, or where we get the word logic. Theo, the logic of God. And the idea of marriage is purely theological. God is the author of marriage. And theologians will know that their married life is the sacrament that gets you to heaven. Your husband, what women? Your husbands are going to be the source of your sanctification. Because the only way you can get to heaven is if you carry your cross. And your cross has a name. You see, one of the big struggles about marriage is that we aren't theologians willing to put together the pieces of what makes marriage. So let me help you to become true theologians. You ready? A theologian is someone who practices something called Gestalt. Gestalt is a mathematical term and also a philosophical term. Gestalt has an equation, and if you want the recipe for a good marriage, pay attention to the equation of a good marriage. And the equation is this: the whole is greater than the total sum of parts. Let me explain that again. The whole is greater than the total sum of parts. The total sum of parts could be like a box of puzzle pieces. You got the total sum of parts. The whole is when you put the pieces together. And when I was a child, again, I know you might be surprised because I come across as very shy when I speak. Shy and timid and humble. And so when I was a child, I was actually a little precocious. And so to keep me occupied, my mom and dad gave me a box of puzzle pieces that was like 1 billion pieces, to make the picture. And I would be done in 20 minutes. And my mom would be so impressed until she saw what I did. You see, if the pieces didn't fit, I found scissors and made them fit. And what do you get at the end of that process? A mess. Something completely other than what the author intended. Which is why in order to become a theologian, you have to be patient enough to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Folks, that basically means in order for you to have a good relationship with your spouse, you've got to be patient. Be careful. Because this patience is rooted in the verb pati. So the word patience, from the verb pati, patior, passio, passionis, is where we get the word passion. And people are like, oh yeah, I want some of that in my marriage. Until you realize what the word pati really means. It's the verb that means to suffer. That's why people who are passionate are people who are willing to suffer. That's why the word patience is the same root as that's why people in hospitals are called, because they're suffering. And so when we say, following the inspiration of St. Paul, that love is patient, love is kind, love is patient comes first, because love can't be proven in a microwavable minute. Love is proven with a crock pot. It takes a long time. It takes us a minute to fall in love. It's going to take a lifetime to prove love. And our world is becoming so impatient because we have bought into the fast food mentality. And folks, I have no trouble with fast food. I love fast food. And do not judge me. My favorite is Kentucky Fried Chicken. Because the Colonel will one day be beatified a saint, okay? And if I can't get Kentucky Fried Chicken, do you all have a Chick-fil-A out here? No? Move to a Chick-fil-A near you. They're amazing. The problem with them is that I only hunger for Chick-fil-A on Sundays when they're closed, right? And if I can't get to Chick-fil-A, then I usually go for Popeyes. It's good, especially if you realize that the word Popeyes really has Pope, yes. Oh yeah, all right, that's why I like Popeyes. But the whole idea of fast food is what we think we have in our relationships. My spouse should be this way already. My kids should be this way already. It's not gonna happen. Because the problem is, you are all, hopefully, praying for patience. And if you are praying for patience, God has answered your prayer. In your annoying spouse, in your obnoxious children. I don't pray for patience some days because I know God is going to answer me with traffic jams or airline congestion. So I instead just pray for humility, which is another ingredient for good marriages. This idea of being patient with your spouse and being humble. Humble is a word that doesn't define modern love these days, unfortunately. But you can't have true love unless you're humble. Then the word humble from the Latin humus humilis means you're dirt, and to dirt you will return. Humility implies that you've got both feet in reality. And if you have both feet grounded in reality, you're going to realize that there is a commandment that we need to practice humbly and patiently. And it's the first commandment. Are you ready for it? There's a God, and it ain't you. Which means in a spousal and family relationship, no one person has the entire truth. The way we will understand truth is if we're, as a family, as a couple, willing to listen to what God is trying to teach us. But we are so impatient, we're like me with the puzzle pieces. We don't even take the pieces of our marriage and put them together to the point where we're rushing it. At one point, folks, we have just changed our understanding of marriage from the way our parents did it to how we do it now. Now couples are just literally speeding the relationship process ahead of time, to the point where now, as soon as they get married, they already have a big home, and now they're house poor. Every room is filled with toys and technology because they're just trying to piece perfection too quickly. That's not how our patient parents did it. No, they bought a small home. They bought like one couch at a time. That's why every piece of furniture mattered, which is the reason why they still have the plastic over the couch. Because they knew that they can't have everything all at once. And we have been, unfortunately, rushing our relationships. So what I've got to do is make sure that if you are going to have a good relationship, then you're going to do something that God is encouraging you to do. Feed your loved ones. Feed your loved ones with food, but food really will stand for F, fidelity, O, obedience, O, opportunities, D, discernment. Let's go through fidelity real quick, because the last time I checked, when couples get married, they do not vow perfection. They vow fidelity, right? Fidelity presumes something. Fidelity presumes someone or you might become unfaithful. Fidelity presumes you're not perfect and that you will make mistakes. Fidelity presumes that you will be humble enough to say, I love you, those 3 words, with 3 other words. And you know what they are? I am sorry. And if you really are faithful, you will say, I love you with 3 other words. Words that Jesus said from the cross. I forgive you. You see, I think fidelity is sometimes limited to piety. And fidelity is pious for sure, because you look at your loved ones, whether it be your husband, your wife, or your children, and you see them as precious gifts to be held with great esteem. But fidelity also knows that these things, these people, they do not belong to you. They are given to you as gifts from God, and it is your job to nourish and nurture them, not to be the Lord of them. And so fidelity is what our relationships are hungering. And if you think about it, if there's one place where you can be faithful, you know where that is? The dinner table. How many of you have ever had a Thanksgiving miracle and had moist turkey? I've got recipes, all right? So there is hope. But could you imagine eating that moist turkey alone? Or eating that delicious meal with someone you're in a fight with? Unfortunately, we have limited fidelity to just this pious act. And fidelity is hard work. Fidelity presumes you will fall. But fidelity also presumes I will get up and I will try again. That is why, as a priest, I have the privilege of offering people fidelity through the forgiveness of sins, because we all fall. Couples, technically, you are the ministers of your sacrament. You have almost essentially a sacramental-ish power to absolve the other. If you're going to be humble enough to examine your conscience and say how I've offended you and God. Because the fact is, in the institution of marriage, the couple, man and wife, confer the sacrament to each other. Do you know that? If you confer the sacrament of love to each other, then you should be very quick. As the church is so generously fast to offer forgiveness, you ought to be offering forgiveness to each other. And it's not easy. Not easy at all. I mean, I'm not married except for in a spiritual way to the church and in a way to all of God's people. And I just remember fidelity from my mom and dad. Again, I'm their favorite child. So I can't imagine how it was for my parents to raise my siblings. Oh my goodness. But they loved them. And I know that my family might sound crystal clear and perfect. We're hardly perfect. My dad says this, my family, we put fun in dysfunction. We've got it all. Brokenness, we've got alternative lifestyles, we've got people who are struggling with this, that, and the other. But you know what we do? We always find time to eat together. Because fact is, that table becomes a source of fidelity. And it becomes the place where you can practice the second ingredient to what your spouse and your relationships are hungering for. Obedience. So you got fidelity, let's talk about obedience. Now, a lot of times people think that obedience are things that only priests and religious have to offer, right? That we have a superior that we've got to always say yes to. But that's not obedience. Can I tell you who the true obedient people are? Husbands to their wives, and wives to their husbands. That's obedience. The word obedience, obedire, ob is like the Latin that kind of says towards what needs to be heard, and the word dire, audire, to listen, strangely has the verb dire in it because that's the verb that means to speak. So obedience is tending towards that which is spoken. All right? That's kind of what the word obedience really means. Unfortunately, the devil is trying to speak to you too. And it's very easy to listen to the devil because the devil is everywhere, even here in your hearing. And what we've got to do is clarify, who are we listening to? Who are we feeding our ears and our minds with? And you got to become better theologians, folks, to make sure that you can discern. And listening is not an easy thing to do in today's world. Just a quick story about how a woman was arguing with me on a plane, an international flight. 10 hours long, sitting there. And at one point she says, "Are you a Catholic priest?" And I looked at her and I said, "I could be Anglican. I could be Anglican." I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, why can't priests get married? Why can't women become priests? Why do we deny that Jesus was actually in love with Mary Magdalene?" And I looked at her and I said, "Lady, do you want to ask me a question? Because if you want to ask me a question, just ask. But if you want to pick a fight, bring it." That's what I said. And at that moment, I kind of felt the presence of the Blessed Mother and the angels and saints, because I felt the Blessed Mother literally smack me upside my head. And the angels and saints going, "He just got smacked in the head." And then I literally almost heard in the consciousness of my heart, if you really are a Catholic priest, and if you really are my child's son, brother, and minister, then you will do what my son Jesus did. And my son was willing to listen. Suffer, yes, definitely. But listen. Listen. And we don't do that, which is why I want to tell you about a new initiative. On top of my TV shows, the books, and my travels, and the podcast that's coming up, my newest kind of work is going to be a full show podcast called Shoot the Shiitake with Father Leo. And in this podcast, I am going to interview everyone and anyone outside of the Catholic Church's guidance. I am going to interview a gay couple, a divorced couple, a transgender. In fact, my first interview is going to be someone who is going to be going into surgery, before surgery, and then even after surgery. This is going to be a weird thing, folks, because as a priest and as a professional speaker, all I generally do is talk at people. And yet, in this show, I'm going to posture myself and be a listener, and I am going to try to draw out Christ in them, and I am going to even ask them, we might disagree with almost about everything, but how can I be a good priest for you? And it doesn't mean I have to agree with you, but how can I be a good priest for you? And this is almost what you have to do to your spouses, to your children. How can I hear the hungers of your heart? How can I try to be God's love and fulfill what it is that you're craving for? Listening is not an easy thing, which is why what I need to do is make sure that you're not bored. Remember the definition of boring? Answering a question that no one is asking. At the end of this talk, I'm going to give you a chance to prove you're not boring by you having a chance to ask me some questions. So I'm going to give about 5 to 8 minutes of answering some questions for you, because I need to hear what's going on in your life. Frankly, I want to give you this third ingredient to what your family is craving for. Oh, opportunities. Why? Because we are given the entire world. We are given the body, blood, and soul divinity of Jesus Christ. We have the opportunity to get to heaven. We do have the opportunity to get to heaven. So let me just make a quick question here, right? I know there's going to be active participation, but it's right after lunch, and so I have to get you moving. How many of you, and you got to raise your hand, how many of you even want the opportunity to get to heaven? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Some of you were kind of slow. Dude over here was like, you going to go? I'll go if you go. I mean, seriously. If you don't get to heaven, what's the alternative? So let me ask you this other question. How many of you are going to become saints? Raise your hand. Okay. Awkward. Some of you guys are like, ugh. So let me give you the opportunity of a lifetime and just remind you that the only people who get to heaven are saints. And saints have always seen themselves in union with the church as being, ready for this, pilgrims. So what I want you to do is take advantage of the opportunity that I'm giving to you and become a pilgrim with me in the Holy Land this June 17th through the 27th, 2018. Come with me and be a pilgrim in Italy. Come with me and be a pilgrim in Spain, Ireland. I don't care. Honestly, I just need you to become pilgrims because we have the opportunity to be Catholic. And the word Catholic means universal. But unfortunately, we sometimes limit Catholicism to being parishioners. And folks, parishioners are great, but you can't be parochial only. So even if you don't go with any of me on my amazing trips that are not only affordable, they are fun. I still need you to be a pilgrim, to be on a search, take advantage of opportunities the church has to offer you. And in a way, I'm preaching to the choir because all of you some of you came from very far away to come out here because you're pilgrims seeking the opportunity to get to heaven. But if you are one of those people who had to get dragged out here, I get it. Be at least a pilgrim and try going to another Catholic parish. On occasion, just leave your envelopes at the church where you're registered, okay? Or how about being a pilgrim and attending a different Mass time? Oh, how about this? How about being a pilgrim and sitting in a different pew? In other words, take advantage of the opportunity that God has given to you and stop being boring. Ask yourself this question. How am I getting to heaven, and where are the rest stops where I'm experiencing God's grace along the way? Get out there, folks, and see this world and be impressed with how we as Catholics have changed the landscape for the better. And now the last ingredient, discernment. Discernment, which is so key to good relationships for your family, for your future. Gosh. Discernment will help you to make good decisions. So I'm going to just tell you something here. I'm all about being free enough to make good decisions, which is why this might shock you. I am actually 100% pro-choice. Now, don't think I am in any way supporting abortion. I'm not. I didn't say I was pro-abortion. I didn't say I was pro-killing an unborn child, and some of the pro-abortion people who have renamed themselves to be pro-choice are going to say, it's not a baby, it's a fetus. And I say, well, then learn some Latin and realize that the word fetus just simply means small person. Booyah. I mean, seriously. Take advantage of learning that what you're saying actually matters and realize that decision comes from two Latin words. Ready? Decidere. The verb cidere or cidere literally means to kill. So if you commit a homocidere, you literally commit a homicide. If you commit a suicidere, you commit killing sui self. So if you make a decidere, like, are the two of you a couple right here? You're married? Because you're sitting real close to each other. I just wanted to make sure. What is your name, sir? Myron? and you married Katrina. Myron made a decision to marry Katrina, which basically says Sarah, Alexis, and Bethany are dead to Myra now. That's the power of decision. But if Myron messes up on his decision, Katrina kills Myron. All there is to it. So the only way we can make good decisions is if we are practicing the art of discernment. That means understanding all sides of the story. Doesn't that oftentimes look like a kid with a box of puzzle pieces and trying to see how they all fit together? Taking time, sometimes trial and error, sometimes taking that piece and putting it off to the side and realizing, gosh, this issue, I don't know all the facts yet, so let me at least keep it there until I get a bigger picture. You see, theologians are all about becoming discerners, understanding what God is trying to say to them. And God has so much to say that we can't handle the truth in one bite. We have to be taking little niblets of truth throughout our entire life, which is why the book Epic Food Fight is all about a bite-sized history of salvation. Every day we need to be taking a bite of faithfulness, a bite of obedience, opportunity, and literally every day, every moment, are we discerning so that our decisions lead to life and not death. Food, it kind of is a lot more than you thought. And it could be the stuff that nourishes your relationship. So I'm going to just kind of close with one story before I take your questions and then end with another story. There was a couple that was married like 47 years. And every Monday, they would have a sandwich. And the husband always gave the wife the end pieces, the crusty part of the bread. And at one point, the wife just said, I just gotta say, I hate those pieces. And you have for years given me those end pieces, and I can't stand those pieces. And the husband sheepishly said, honey, I am so sorry. I didn't know. You see, those end pieces are my favorite part. And I was just simply giving to you my favorite part. This is a couple that loved each other. They needed to practice more fidelity by being obedient and listening to each other and creating opportunities to have something better than just sandwiches on Monday so that they can discern how to feed one another. So that this event was not boring, I will now give you a chance to come up here and ask me questions. Now, if no one comes up, then you will not be given a chance to ask me any more questions for the rest of the day. But if you come up, you will prove that Alaska and that Fairbanks isn't boring. So get on up here and ask your questions. Come on up, come on up, come on up. Very impressive. All of the good Catholics in the back actually made their way on up. So come on up. Come on up and just tell us your name and where you're from.
Rudy Poglich from Wasilla, 6 hours south. Your blend of, you're a priest now, you're into choreography, you can moon dance like Michael Jackson, you're good with the sticks and the knives. How did all that come to pass?
And I'm an amazing basketball player too, really. So it all came to pass because I was actually willing to discern and listen to God. And I took advantages of the opportunities to go on retreats, even as a young adult. And I just realized that my boredom with church was my fault because I wasn't asking, what is God trying to give to me at Mass? And so this idea of a very strange, listen, my brother should be the priest in the family. He's really nice and patient, but he has 7 impediments, his wife and 6 kids, okay? So I am it. But the idea of me becoming a priest is only because I was really willing to just get up when I fall, faithfulness, try to listen to God, obedience, took advantage of opportunity and really took advantage of discernment retreat experiences. And that's how I've been fed with the food, and now I can only give what I've received. And God has been giving me a lot of himself, and hopefully I'm giving it to you as well. Next question.
Hello, I'm Ruth Poglich from Wasilla also. Actually, as you were
Okay,
talking...
by the way, Wasilla is winning. Okay? All right. Yes.
As you were talking, I was just wondering, have you seen the movie Bella? Because the thing about family and food, those themes are so strong in that movie.
Yep.
I was just curious if you had.
So the themes of food and family are in almost every kind of Christian or spiritual influenced movie. Food is so much more serious than I even explained, which is why in my upcoming book called Saving Your Family, I'm going to show a family how to eat with each other, because that's where your family is saved. From the time when you are trying to force feed your kid, mashed peas, to the time when your children are trying to feed you mashed peas. And what is it going to be like between those two extremes on how to keep your family together? Good food will do it. Good food will bring them to the table. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Brendan Wolf, and I'm not from Wasilla, I'm from Fairbanks.
Fairbanks, there you go.
And now you mentioned in your TV show that...
Every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, EWTN. Yes.
Okay, in your TV show, you said that you are asking all these people that aren't Catholic how you can be a better priest.
For them.
Okay, for them. Okay, now why are you answering a question that they're not asking?
What is that? I'm sorry, I'm missing something here.
No, I'm teasing you a little bit, saying that the definition of being boring is answering a question
that no one is asking.
that nobody's asking.
That's right.
But they're not Catholic.
That's right.
So they're not asking you how to be a good priest.
See, and that's where I would disagree with you. As the work that I do, I literally am in all these different environments. And this, you know what this is? This Roman collar, you know what this is? This is actually a freak magnet. You put this on, you get them from all walks of life, folks. Which is why sometimes I don't wear it, or at least I hide it, or as some priests will say, priest on vacation. All right, so because this is a great sign for people to ask the question. This, even for non-Catholics, non-Christians, is a sign of, and Archbishop even mentioned that last night in his address, how they will see somehow the priesthood as a connection to God. And that's exactly what I've got to do. Reach out not just to the saints who want to be saints, but sinners who don't know they're called to be saints, like all of you who didn't raise your hand when I asked who's going to become a saint. See, what I've got to do is make myself available and provide opportunities. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Shannon. I'm from Fairbanks as well.
Yes.
You've given some wonderful advice to husbands and wives. I'd like you to give some hints to parents on how they can discern what God wants for their children as opposed to what they want for their children.
It's the same thing. A relationship is a relationship. They've got to be willing to listen to their children. So in the forthcoming book, it's going to challenge parents to be more like servants to their children. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's exactly what you're called to be. So when a kid says to you, Mom, I want to be able to hang out with my friends late at night, and you say, no, you're going to come home at 9 o'clock, and they say, why? And you say to them, because I'm your parent and I said so. The real answer should be, why do you think that's the case? And you're going to open up opportunities for conversation. And so I think the same reality between couples on how to be willing to be faithful, obedient, opportunistic, and discern with each other is the same thing for parents with children, children with parents, and more importantly, with God. You see, my job is to get you to heaven. And one guy thought he got there, ladies and gentlemen, because he saw the clouds, there were people dressed in white, there were harpists, there was food on the table. Delicious food, calorie-free food on the table. And he thought, I'm certainly in heaven. But then he realized that everyone there was miserable because they had really long utensils and they couldn't get the food at the end of the fork into their mouth. And because God is generous, God showed this man a glimpse of heaven. And you know what? It looked exactly the same. Clouds, toga, harps, food, long utensils. But these folks were happy for one reason alone. They weren't trying to feed themselves. With those long forks, they were literally reaching across the aisle and feeding one another. And hopefully at the end of this talk, you now know what this world is truly hungering for. True food. So, brothers and sisters, come and get it.